Okay, folks, we ready to roll? Thanks, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, October 1st, 2024 council meeting, regular council meeting. Welcome to everybody. I'll start off with our acknowledgement that the town of Ladysmith acknowledges with gratitude that this meeting takes place on the unceded territory of the Staminas First Nation. First thing on the agenda is the agenda approval. Looking for someone to approve the agenda for the regular meeting of council for October 1st, 2024. Councillor Jacobson, sorry. Changes to the,
Thank you.
sorry, a little rusty. Okay, I'm going to take a step back. No, do we approve the agenda first and then do the rise and report?
No,
Changes?
there's going to be a change to the agenda
Okay.
first.
Let me rephrase that. Ms. Balma, do we have any changes to the agenda?
Madam Mayor, yes, we do. A late agenda item containing the presentation for item 8.2 Transportation Plan Project Outcomes was circulated to council and published on the website.
Thank you. Can we have someone to move the agenda as amended? Councillor Jacobson, second by Councillor Patterson. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion carries. Thank you. All right, next item number 5 is the rise and report. Ms. Boma, do we have any items to report from the closed agenda?
Yes, we do. The council rose with report on the following item, that council appoint Jake Belababa, Director of Development Services, to bid on any of the residential properties included in the 2024 tax sale.
Thank you. And moving on to number 6, this is minutes of the regular meeting of council, September 24th, 2024. The recommendation is that council approve the minutes of the regular meeting of council held September 24th, 2024. Moved by Councillor Bertanen, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed. Thank you. Motion carries. Moving on now to committee minutes. This is number 7.1, Public Arts Committee. The recommendation is that council receive the minutes for the Public Arts Committee meeting held September 23rd, 2024. Moved by Councillor Gourlay, seconded by Councillor Bertanen. Any questions or discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to 7.2. This is the Poverty Reduction Task Group. The recommendation is that council receive the minutes of the Poverty Reduction Task Group held July 17th, 2024. Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Jacobson. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries. Thank you. We're just ripping right along. Looking at now 7.3, this is Accessibility Advisory Committee. The recommendation is to council receive the minutes of the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting held May 22nd, 2024. Moved by Councillor Jacobson, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, that takes us very quickly down to delegations. And I'm going to invite Rosalie Sari as the project director for firstly, the Social Planning Cowichan Poverty Reduction Project Outcomes. Welcome. Would you like us to wait to the end for questions, or that's probably easiest?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everyone. I get to give you 2 presentations tonight. Aren't you lucky? Great to see you all. You're all very familiar with the poverty reduction strategy and the Community Together to End Poverty Huanatswilm project, which has been now in its 4th year since we did the strategy together way back in 2021. Oh, I have the remote. So just as a very quick recap, we did Stream 1, which was putting the strategy together in 2020, and it was adopted by Council in 2021. Stream 2 is seeking additional funding for some of the engagements or some of the actions that were identified in the strategy. So we did that for its first year in 2022 to 2023. And then last year and this year, we did a second intake under the same stream to do some more actions out of the strategy, which was excellent. So just a very, again, quick recap from the strategy. We had 10 priority themes in these are issues and impacts that people feel when they're living in poverty. So public transportation, food security, addressing stigma, racism, and discrimination, access to education and employment options, adequate income supports, and the means to make ends meet, affordable housing and adequate living conditions, access to mental health and addiction services, mental health, discomfort, and stress, access to healthcare services, and physical health and wellness. And I'm just reading them out tonight because it will kind of set the stage on the transportation plan, which I'll get to you as well. So here's the vision, principles, and values that we had identified in the strategy. I won't go through that, but you're all very familiar with it. And so getting straight to the actions and goals that we did for the last year. The first goal was to improve access to education and employment options. So this was a new goal out of the different themes that we focused on this round. And so in partnership, we did deliver 4 employer seminars with the Chamber of Commerce in Ladysmith, as well as our poverty reduction task group supporting in those efforts. And so I'll get into those shortly. We also wanted to continue to improve food security, food equity, and so LAF, LRCA, Stamanis Recreation, and the Town of Ladysmith's recreation programming all received some of the funds that were received to deliver a minimum of 12 food equity building workshops. Lots of fun activities happened in those. And then we also wanted to move from the education and awareness piece into action with the poverty reduction themes. And so we hosted 4 community dinner and dialogues to engage community members in the strategy, in those different themes, and also to kind of see where people wanted to move forward out of that. So most of you, all of you made it to those, at least one of those dinners, which was really great to see you all there. So our wonderful poverty reduction task group is a select advisory committee of council, as you know, so we do have a terms of reference, and it included members from the Town of Ladysmith. We had Sue Glenn from staff, as well as acting Mayor Mackay on that, on the task group, as well as member from Stamanis First Nation, LRCA, LAF, the Chamber, Island Health, our community health network, myself from social planning, and then we had various community members come in and out. And then we also had a food equity subcommittee to kind of oversee the food actions. And so that again included Sue Glenn from the Town of Ladysmith. And then we had Stamanis First Nation, LAF, LRCA. And then we also had an excellent new dietitian to the community that joined midway. And she has been integral in the food equity actions that took place and has really been integrating herself into the community, which has been great. And then as well myself, just kind of facilitating those meetings. So getting to our employer seminar series, the first one was the benefits of living wage. So Social Planning Cowichan does do the living wage calculation for the region every year. This past year, it was $25.20 per hour based on a family of 4 with 2 working adults full-time. I don't know if you know, but social planning was really integral in getting some shifts happening in the way the wage is calculated because of our rural nature. Lots of people do not take public transit, and previous to now, the calculation factored in 1 vehicle in the family and 1 person having a full-time transit pass. And so we were really seeing that the number was quite low in terms of most families having 2 vehicles in the home, which is quite an added expense. So there is now 2 ways to do the calculation, 1 for more rural communities and 1 for more urban ones where they do have that transit option. So that's something positive for just giving more of an understanding of what the realism is for folks living in the Cowichan region. So it was great. We had Anastasia French from Living Wage for Families BC come over from the mainland to give us an overview of what the living wage calculation is all about. We had Ryan Watson from Social Planning talk about the specifics of our wage here and how that's calculated. And then I'm going to butcher his name, but it was, I think, George Warnell from the Canadian Bolivian Bavarian Millwork and Lumber, who is our living wage certified employer, who gave a presentation about the benefits of being a living wage employer. And then we also had Erin Ream from Work BC talk about wage subsidies. So it was a really informative session, lots of questions from the business community that did participate and were able to join us. And we held this session at the Jazz Cafe, which was really delicious. Our second took place in March, and we did fostering cultural safety as the topic. And so we had Tammy August from Stamanis Employment Hub, as well as Lucy Thomas from the Duncan Friendship Center come to share experiences and stories about what it's like for folks who are Indigenous most often, and the cultural safe, how to make the workplace more culturally safe for Indigenous employees. That was something that we really heard loud and clear when it came to developing the strategy under the racism and discrimination theme. And so we really wanted to have that focus in these employer seminars. And so we were able to host this event on Stamanis territory in the health center in the elders room there, which is a beautiful, beautiful space. And it included some cultural protocols as well. So there was a cedar brushing that took place later, and we had some stones for people to have when they were speaking and that kind of thing. So it was really a great session for story sharing and exploring as employers what people can do, what people are doing in their workplace, and then what more they can do to provide that cultural safe workspace. The third, we were unfortunately not able to get someone in person from the Employment Standards branch to come into an in-person presentation for us, but they were really generous in letting us just come on one of their webinars that they already have scheduled. So that's what we did. And then we really monopolized the question and answer period at the very end with folks in the room, again at Jazz Cafe, asking the presenters questions on just different policies and guidelines that have shifted over the years, or were new to some employers as well around employment standards. And then our last one, we did have to get a bit of an extension for this project to fit in Minister Malcolmson. We really wanted, we were anticipating the entire time this second intake was taking place that the province's new poverty reduction strategy was going to be re-released after some engagement that took place last year, wrapped up last year. And so that was released literally on July 24th, the day we had the minister at our event. We were at the Eagles Hall, and yeah, it was great to have her just to kind of share the employment focused actions that they were now releasing in their revised strategy. And then we also had Chelsea Oden from Bonaventure share some different ways that employers can be supporting employees who have diverse abilities. So that was a great also question and answer period, and we had a lovely group photo at the end of it. Maybe I will pause and see if there are any questions specific to the employer seminars. Does anyone have anything? No? All right. So the next goal, as I mentioned, was around food equity. And so we had, this is some of the Stamanis photos that took place there. So they had a really huge event, a herring video event that they had a community dinner around. So they put some of the funds into the food for that event, and that included prawns and crabs. You can see them working away in the kitchen, and there's also some gardening that took place. They have some lovely community gardens outside of the community center there. They also did different sessions where they cooked clam and oysters with the kids. They did some sockeye salmon cleaning, which was awesome. Just having Shirley share the stories of watching the kids learning how to use a knife properly, slowly, taking their time. And really learning how to clean a salmon was something all the kids at all ages were really into. So that was really cool. And then with the salmon, there was lots of salmon jarring. And they also were able to do a pequan demonstration with a couple of the cooks at Stimulus as well, who were able to be kind of mentored from an elder on how to do that properly. So the skills there have kind of been lost within Stimulus, within the people of Stimulus, Shirley was saying, and so having that that teaching was really important. And then there's some of the clam juice that they made there, broth, and yes, they did a lot of work there. Then here's some photos from LAF. They did a lot of different workshops. So part of it was either you could do workshops or you could integrate some food into your regular programming. So that really is what LAF is all about, is integrating a lot of different food into the programming. And there's with all of the different organizations that participated in the part, there's lots of intergenerational participation as well. And LAF has a lot of senior volunteers there, so working with the kids, cooking food and preparing food for the families to take home. So they also did some herb drying, as well as some pickling, I think, as well. Shannon was there. Sorry, Shannon's with me. I forgot to mention Shannon Crowards from LRCA came to join for the presentation as well, just to give support. So thanks, Shannon. But she worked really well with LAF as well, and just with the fruit rescue, sharing the food that's collected through that program. LAF receives a lot, and then also does that value add with what they receive. And so here are a couple of the individual workshops that the LRCA also did. They did a Christmas baking with some youth, and then they also had some soup days where they were distributing homemade soup and recipes to people who were visiting the food bank. And in addition to that, Shannon was part of the 4 sessions that the town of Ladysmith did with their portion of the funds. Really awesome collaborations happening with the school district at LIS Intermediate School. Island Health CGC came to help with one of the days, and where they did 4 different Thursdays, where they were at so they had the group of 90 children who went to 3 different locations at Frank Jameson Community Center, the LRCA, Heart on the Hill Kitchen, as well as at LIS. And so they were either planting, learning about gardening, planting seeds, taking some seedlings home, or they were learning skills about how to chop vegetables, how to make a salad, and then also taking home weekly food recipes and different food lists and resources for their families to share at home as well. And so with what was planted in the springtime, that was able to grow over the summer, and now with the fall program at the school, they're able to harvest. So it was kind of a full process that was Sue's vision in terms of being able to overlap some of these programmings and some of the funding, which is really exciting. Any questions about the food aspect before all right, I'll motor right along. So the biggest part in the community was the community dinner and dialogue. So these are really open to everyone in the public, whereas the others were more focused on employers, and then with kids around the food equity workshops. And so here is where we really got to encourage community to come out and join us to really learn more about the strategy and more about the themes and how they can participate in some way. And also identify, where the strategy should go next, which of the next actions we should focus on, where to prioritize our efforts. So we had the first one in December, just before the holidays at Aggie Hall, where people just got to learn about the themes and sit at tables and pick a theme, whatever they were interested in, and kind of do a World Cafe style discussion around what they saw in the community, and then take a look at the actions that were already listed and see what they had to say about those, and also add new ones if they had any ideas there. There's the room. It's quite a great turnout. So we offered dinner and then the dialogue after. And then the second one we offered at the end of January, and this was a great session to really dig in a little bit more on the actual actions within the theme. So we did a dotting exercise, getting people to just identify which of the actions they wanted to really dig in deeper on and plan out. So we had people identify, and then we had everybody kind of sit at a table of their choice wherever they had the most interest to talk about what's needed to make this action move forward, who are the players in the community, who needs to be involved, what are the logistics, what's needed, and then we actually asked people to raise their hands if they were interested and available to participate moving forward, which we did get at the end of the project, over 18 people really wanting to participate longer term in these actions, which is really exciting. The third dinner we held at the end of February, and that was on Stamanis territory in the community center. And it was a good opportunity to be able to offer it up for folks who live in Ladysmith and may never have been on Stamanis territory before to come out to the community center. And so it was great to see a lot of people take that opportunity to do that. And then also invite, of course, Stamanis members to join as well. And so we were able to once again just revisit the themes and the actions, and we did a second take of the first and second session in this third session, just to bring everyone along and get everyone on the same page. And then the fourth, here's the big dinner that first day. And then the last dinner was at the end of May, and we held it again on Stamanis territory. And this was the opportunity to say, here were the actions that people chose to move ahead on. We had different tables to revisit, what had been planned for each of those actions, and then also offer resources around those different themes. So we had different tables with information about those actions or about the theme, and then to learn and understand more of the resources that are currently available, and then what work is being done to expand on those, and then also dig into those actions that were selected. So it was a big night. There was lots of information, lots of buzz in the room, lots of people visiting the different tables, which was really exciting. And then, of course, we wanted to celebrate. It was really the end of the project at this point, or this round of funding. And so we did have a cake from Old Town Bakery, which was super delicious. And yeah, it was just a great night to kind of have we have also had a wall of all of the actions that we've done and all different other kind of photo collages of all the work to date, which was really cool to see. And then I just wanted to brag about all the delicious food that we had at every meal. So there were prawns at one of the dinner and dialogues that Stamanis had that they incorporated in, fry bread, lasagna from Micheletti's catering, and chili and seafood chowder, and lots of vegetables and fruit, and beautiful food from Jazz Cafe as well for the employer seminars. So looking ahead, we've spent a lot of time at the Poverty Reduction Task Group really trying to figure out how to continue to move things forward, if that's the will of Town Council, in terms of carrying forward more of the actions. And so we have some of our organizations had applied for additional funding. There was some poverty reduction funds that came through the Prosperity Foundation grant. LAF actually was successful in receiving some of those funds, so they'll be carrying on with another kind of dinner and dialogue kind of session. But the funding was pretty limited, I will say. So they were the only ones to receive funding out of the Ladysmith area, with only 4 on total receiving funds out of the Cowichan region. So we're very unsure about where the funding will come from for UBCM received provincial funds through their provincial strategy. I know that members of council met with UBCM at the convention just recently. And so as far as I know, funding will not be continuing until at the earliest February, when the next budget after this election happens. So at the Poverty Reduction Task Group table, we've talked a lot about with or without funding, how do we continue if we're able to. We have a very dedicated task group. The members are super motivated to carry on. We have 18 community volunteers who raise their hands on issues around transportation. Some wanted to start a school fund program, food program, improving mental health services, more food equity activities and workshops, which, there's 1,000 ideas for that, which is amazing, and a lot of work that is happening. And then income supports and guaranteed basic income was another action that was selected. And then secondary suites and housing. And so there has been some movement since these actions were selected. You know, the housing kind of way we're moving with housing has changed at a provincial level, which has impacted municipalities, which is hopefully in a positive way in terms of addressing the housing crisis. Income supports, and there have been some increases with the new poverty reduction strategy around disability supports. Food equity workshops, as I said, lots is happening there. Mental health services, that's always a challenge, and quite a large challenge. Transportation, I'll get into in a minute. And then the school food program, there's also funding coming down for schools as well, and schools will be able to decide how they want to spend that. So Laura, who is the dietitian I was speaking about, she'll actually be quite involved in supporting the schools in that. So there is opportunity for people to volunteer, and where I'm able to share information with those volunteers as it comes up, and they can directly participate with organizations. And then if there's anything that we can carry on as a task group, then we can also invite them to participate in that. But we really did talk about how we, the task group is committed to continuing, but really it is important to have kind of a designated backbone, as we call it, when we're thinking of a collective impact framework, which is, sharing an agenda, sharing measurements, having agreed upon way of moving forward together, and having that one person that kind of funnels the information, brings people together, keeps all the information in one spot, so that person is really integral to keeping things moving and keeping things active. So that is the end of my presentation on that.
Forgive me. Thank you. It's a lot of work to get that all together and to present it to us. So we appreciate your presentation. And I know you're going to be doing a second one for us right away. It's also rewarding, having participated in the committee, to see it all laid out and all the different aspects that have gone on just this year alone, not to mention the past years. But I'll open it up to questions from council, and then we'll move into our transportation. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. And thank you very much for the work that you and your group have put in. I attended, I think, most of those. And the food was great, and the roundtables were very, very interesting. I didn't make the the guaranteed living wage subject. Has anything been done on that to take it out to more employers? Has there been any broader work done, and any feedback?
Yeah, it's a tough one because we do have, even Anastasia French from Living Wage BC will say that, some employers are fine to carry on year after year being a certified employer, but other times it isn't possible for them to carry forward, especially when there's a large jump in the living wage. And so to be a living wage employer, you are guaranteeing that you are providing that wage, and all employees receive at least that as a minimum. So yeah, as a region, we definitely have lots of work as Social Planning Cowichan to promote the living wage more on an annual basis, and we will be doing the calculation coming up this fall again. So no, we have not done a great job. I will admit, in promoting it. It was excellent to be able to do a workshop and actually bring employers together to talk about it. It is a challenge for employers. $25.20 per hour is quite a high wage for a lot of employers, especially smaller ones. For the Canadian Bavarian mill workers, it's an easier opportunity to be able to offer that because they see the benefit in offering that higher wage to keep employees that they're training on a very specific skill set. So yeah, it just depends on the employer, and it depends on the availability of that.
Just one comment. It's not that you haven't done a very good job. It's just you've had a plate full, and in today's times when business struggles and stuff. So you've got, and your committee have one big mountain to climb. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just saying, as Social Planning Cowichan, not the task group, we have a better job to do regionally in promoting it. That's for sure.
Thank you. Councillor Jacobson, then Gourlay.
Thank you. And again, thank you to your group and yourself for all the hard work and commitment that you guys put towards all these just really meaningful and significant tasks. I don't even know what else to think or call them. You did mention that you had a dietitian that was working with schools potentially. Do you know if that's just through the Cowichan School District, or are they involved, or do they have a counterpart with School District 68?
Yes, she is working specifically with the Ladysmith schools.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there further questions? Councillor Gurley.
Thank you. My questions was about the employers who attended the seminars. Were they, in terms of size of companies, how many employees did they have? What was the range that you had?
I would say it was a smaller range. We had Steve from PharmaSave at all 4 sessions, which was great. We even had the director of HR from the city of Nanaimo attend our cultural safety seminar as well. So yeah, it depends on the workshop and it depends the size there. Yes, but we didn't have, let's say, a large union organization or anything participating in those. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, we kept it largely local. Not that we kept it that way. That's just the way it turned out.
Mm-hmm.
Largely local groups. Are there other questions? Okay, I just want to finish off with a comment, and that is that it's noteworthy that the group of individuals at the table of this committee were a powerhouse. And not only they were powerhouse resources of people, but they showed up every time on Zoom, in person, no matter where we were meeting. An incredible amount of synergy created with this group of professionals. So, a testament to the leadership of our representative from social planning, Cowich and Rosalie. Incredible leadership on the committee and moving the agendas forward. So you kept the soul in it. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And with that, I will ask us to move on to our next item, which again is Rosalie. And this is the transportation plan project outcomes. And the presentation is to be distributed as a late. Oh, sorry, we've got that piece. We don't need to read that part out loud. So I'll let you carry on. This is a spin-off from the poverty reduction work.
Yes. Okay, sorry, I can't change my voice or anything to liven things up and give you this monotone same person, but here we go. So at the poverty reduction task group table, we talked a lot about transportation and how transportation is the overarching impact of all the other 9 themes within the poverty reduction strategy. And so we talked a lot about that. We talked about how expensive it is. And when you're looking at a UBCM $50,000 grant to do some of the actions, it's really hard to dig into transportation for that amount. However, we did find $20,000 to specifically dig in a bit deeper over an 8-month period, which I don't recommend anyone doing that personally. I really don't. But we did it, and here we are. And that's why you're receiving the report late. So I do apologize for that. You will receive it early next week, so you can dig into all the juicy data. So just as an overview and introduction, you know the background context of your own community. Part of the CVRD, we have Oyster Bay and Staminas First Nation, areas G and H, both utilizing the town as their town where they get groceries, where they utilize services, seek medical appointments, those type of things often work. Between 2016 and 2020, population increased by 6.4%. And the area a new area that they've included in the census data actually has Staminas territory as well as, or Staminas Reserve 13, as well as Oyster Bay. And then areas H and G all under one area. So it's really actually very helpful for the purpose of this project. The median age in Ladysmith is 52.4 years, slightly higher than the rest of the CVRD. So just a recap of the low income stats that we've been using in the poverty reduction strategy. Over 2,000 adults, over 2,400 seniors, and 3,100 children and youth under 18 live in low income. So transportation is a big challenge. and 32% we saw of employed workers over, oh, that should be, no, that's right, over 15 years travel outside of Ladysmith but remain in the CVRD census division, and 36.6 commute to a different subdivision, census division, such as Nanaimo and likely Nanaimo. When we look at the time spent commuting by employed individuals, we see that 36% are under 15 minutes, 31 are 32% pretty much are 15 to 29 minutes, and then 20% are 30 to 44 minutes. So how we got here is from the poverty reduction strategy. Again, we really wanted to dig into this very large challenge, but wanted to give it some proper a proper look at and see what the challenges and the needs were, and to look at some of the options. So I have that highlighted here out of the recommendations from your strategy: to establish a focus group of representatives to take a look at the areas that are not being serviced, and how we can make improvements. So that was the big one. So many of the challenges you're probably mostly aware of. Individual transportation costs can be reduced with more focus improving active and public transportation. However, it's very costly to do transit, especially on a broad regional scale. And it's very limited to how municipalities are able to fund their own local areas, which does leave a lot of gaps. So north of downtown to and including Staminas First Nations up until recently, it doesn't receive service. Transfer Beach, Ladysmith Marina doesn't receive any service. Most of the Davis Road South area, all that new development there, and then any new developments recent or newly being developed will not have service. North Oyster and Diamond, Area H and Area G, Solitaire do not contribute their own taxes into transit, so they don't receive any service and often are using, well, I would say Solitaire more than North Oyster and Diamond perhaps, using services in Ladysmith. And then the hills are a big challenge. While many do enjoy walking and cycling, if they're really trying to get around with groceries or the weather isn't ideal, that makes it a real challenge. And then obviously active transportation infrastructure improvements are also costly and will take some time to implement. I know it's on the agenda and in your strategic plan, but of course these things take time. So the purpose of the project was to evaluate the feasibility of what different options might work for the area, and identify possible solutions. So we first formed a transportation action committee to guide the process of this project, and it was funded through the Community Passenger Transportation Fund that Island Coastal Economic Trust put out. We received the funding in February of 2024. With a deadline of September 30th, 2024. Just want to highlight how quick a turnaround that is once again for my own benefit. So here's a list of the folks on the Transportation Action Committee. We'll say TAC from here on out. We had a representative from Staminas First Nation. We had Acting Mayor Mackay on from Council. We had CVRD Transit Department staff. We had both area directors from G&H. We had Ladysmith Resource Center, Chamber of Commerce representative. We had a school district trustee from School District 68, Island Health representative, and 2 community members at large, as well as myself. So the big exciting news was that on July 2nd, Staminas First Nation was launching their own shuttle. They received federal funds to purchase the shuttle and are funding the service themselves. So this is massive improvement for residents who live on Reserve 13. And it was very great timing because that was one of the big things with this project, was to evaluate how to do that connection. However, because operations and logistics were still in development, there was lots of community consultation happening with Staminas members. So it was a request that we not confuse or muddy the waters between projects. So we didn't really spend a lot of time focused on engaging Staminas members because their new service was in the works and launching. But we did, when we did engage with members, talk about how to connect that shuttle basically to the rest of Ladysmith and what it was like for them to travel around when in Ladysmith and what suggestions they may have from there. Is everyone just some context about the shuttle as well? So the shuttle is free for Stamanis members, and it does connect to Oyster Bay, which the only bus stop there is the number 70, which is the the Nanaimo Cowichan Express, and so that goes from Duncan, has about 7 or 8 stops. It is an express bus, so they don't want to add too many stops, but they did add the Oyster Bay to accommodate the shuttle, which was one of the reasons why it was actually to be able to make that into fruition. So it was very good collaboration there. However, one way to take one of the shuttle is a $7.50 fare, and that's not included in utilizing the rest of the Cowichan Valley system. So if a person were to take the Stamanis shuttle to Oyster Bay, they would have to pay $7.50 to then connect one stop over to the downtown stop. And that wouldn't get them, then they'd have to pay another $2.25, for example, if they wanted to get out to Coronation Mall or anywhere else within the Cowichan system. So Stamanis does offer half of that cost. So if someone's doing a round trip on the shuttle, on the express bus, they will give $7.50, and they have to pay for the other $7.50. So it is expensive for people to use that option, unless they're just going to Oyster Bay, or they get a ride, then that's easy enough. But there are some things that need to be worked out still with that connection. So here's the project timeline. We were awarded the grants in February, put the TAC together in March, and met right away and went through the work plan, got everything ready to do our first round of engagement in April and May. We reviewed that first round in June to August. We launched round 2. And it gives me heart palpitations just thinking about how quick this is. Sorry, I'm traumatized. August, we did research and reviewed the second round of results, and then had the final draft. The draft is being finalized right now from the TAC. They received it late last week. So our target audience was anyone who lives in Ladysmith or travels to and from Ladysmith as their community to access goods and or services. So the key takeaways. I won't get into all of the actual stats and data that we have from the survey for the purpose of this presentation, but you will receive it in the report. Individuals, basically, if you don't have a vehicle, most people feel very disconnected from community. They do have to rely on rides from other people, which is very limiting because most often people don't want to inconvenience their friends and family. So they don't get to do all of the things they'd like to do if they're out and about, if they're worried about catching a ride back. This definitely especially impacts youth, seniors, and those with diverse abilities. And what we heard was 39% of people reported that they do have transit nearby, but only 1% use it daily, and 54% use it rarely. We also heard that 78% reported that they have a vehicle. 90% of them were the primary driver. And only 38% of them said they would prefer to drive over using transit. So there's a lot of wiggle room here in terms of people wanting a service that works for them. They just don't feel they have that service. So that's really important to consider, to have in the back of our minds as we go through this project or presentation. We had a lot of suggestions for a smaller community shuttle with hop-on, hop-off flexibility. And I know you had a lovely shuttle or trolley back in the day, and some people utilized that. Others thought it was more of a novelty. Obviously, as a town, it was expensive to run, which is often the challenge with any community bus of any kind, is that you can get capital funding from provincial or federal governments, but it's the maintenance, it's the operations, that the ongoing costs that really are a challenge to fund. Acting Mayor Mackay and I actually went over to Gabriola Island to check out Gertie with a Gabriola community bus there. They love that bus. It works really well for them. But again, lots of challenges with the maintenance costs and overall operations. So many expressed an interest in more reliable taxi service and or a rideshare program as well. U-Ride is the one that's currently available in Nanaimo. And so I did have a conversation with them, and they have had their eye on Ladysmith. However, it is difficult. Their standard of service is to offer 24/7 service. and they often can't do that with a population of less than 10,000 people because the amount of rides just aren't there to incentivize drivers. So that's the big challenge with any kind of rideshare program. When without access to a vehicle, 66% stated they love walking, 35% love cycling. However, the hilly terrain is a challenge, again, especially if you're carrying items or if it's too hot, too cold, wet, etc. In the first survey, we did have 268 participants and 223 during the second survey. So here's a summary of the 4 top options that we heard out of the first round of engagement. The first was some type of added neighborhood shuttle service. Again, with that hop-on, hop-off model was talked about quite a bit, and encouraging more connectivity. Option 2 was active transportation, but lots of comments of talking about enhancing safety and security measures, so lockups for bikes, scooters, bike lanes, sidewalks, street lighting, those type of things. Option 3 was improving the local taxi service, making it more frequent and reliable. And then the fourth option was the rideshare. During the second round of engagement, we took these 4 options and dug a bit deeper to see what the feasibility would be of each of these. So a summary of the first option, the neighborhood shuttle service, was the most favored option. To be fully utilized, we heard that it needs to have accessible stops. So the Gertie has a flag down system that might work in terms of not having to have bus shuttle or, that's not the word. Shelters, sorry, not shuttles. And not having to get to or from a bus stop. People really wanted more routes covering more neighborhoods with more connectivity between downtown and Coronation Mall especially, but also to other transit connections out of the community, and have more of a frequent schedule during the day, later into the evenings, and there is no service on Sunday or holidays right now. Lots of benefits were drummed up by participants. Improving accessibility was the very first and topmost. Again, it just connects you to everything that we saw listed as the themes in the poverty reduction strategy, but also to fun things like going to Transfer Beach or going to different community events or sporting events, parks, different social activities, those type of things. It increases independence. Aging in place was a huge theme that we heard. A lot of people said if they aren't able to drive, or when they anticipate they will no longer be able to drive, they're just going to move out of Ladysmith. That was very common. Some folks even commented that when they moved here, they didn't anticipate having to need a car, but they had to purchase a car. Improved safety was a big one, with just not always having to walk, especially in unfavorable weather, so it's safer to take a shuttle. Individual and family cost savings, reducing traffic, reducing parking, supporting local businesses. Lots of folks talked about wanting to get home from the pub afterwards, having a safe ride, or going to the community center at 6:30 in the morning and not having to use a vehicle to their exercise class. It would help boost the existing public transit system, connections to larger community centers like Duncan, Victoria, and Nanaimo, and backup transportation for folks if their car needs maintenance or if they're sharing a vehicle and one person needs it for whatever reason. And then also just that extended coverage. So we identified some different zones just to see where people would prioritize needing a shuttle if one were to be designed. So the biggest one was definitely Zone 1 in the center there, which includes 1st Avenue all the way out to 6th Avenue, and then in between Simmons and Methuen. Yes. So that was 38%, almost 39% requesting that zone. Saltaire was an even percentage, wanting coverage up to along Chemainus Road. Basically, they would love a connection from Coronation Mall to Chemainus. And then service along 4th Avenue was the next highest rated section. So really that Zone 1 coverage, and then also across the highway in Zone 5, which is the Rocky Creek Road, Ladysmith Marina, and Transfer Beach area. All of these zones really had extra comments added to them that people really want that connectivity, more frequent connectivity from downtown to Coronation Mall. Right now it is a separate bus from the 31, which does cover a lot of Zone 1, but you have to get down to First Avenue and the highway where the Country Grocer is to connect to another bus to get out to Coronation Mall. So, feasibility around a neighborhood shuttle. As I mentioned, it's costly. It would inevitably overlap with some of the existing BC Transit routes. So we have the 31 Alderwood, which was the Zone 1 coverage, the 34 that goes out to Chemainus, and then the 36 that goes out to Duncan Express. So all of those go along First Avenue. The last two routes go to Coronation Mall and then out along the highway. It would lead to double fares. So if we had a neighborhood shuttle, there would be a fare for that. And then if you connected into the BC Transit system, you'd have to pay an additional fare. And then, as I mentioned, while grants are accessible for capital expenses like purchasing the shuttles, it's the ongoing costs that really are expensive. And the town of Ladysmith, as you know, already pays into the existing BC Transit service, so we would have to look elsewhere for an operator as well as someone to seek that funding. So we've summarized that the most prudent next steps would be to share this engagement feedback with BC Transit to see if we can have some modifications to the current routes in Ladysmith before considering actually pursuing a shuttle. Where an additional shuttle may be useful. Some mentioned a lot of opportunity for community events, so perhaps the business community would help kick in some funds with the LRCA, who does have a bus already for different community events, getting down to the marina or down to Transfer Beach, that kind of thing. But the Rocky Creek Road, Transfer Beach Marina area to downtown was a big connector wish, as well as Oyster Bay to Ladysmith to accommodate Stemaina shuttle riders and workers and residents that will be growing in that area. And then, of course, we did have a lot of Solterra participation, and they really do want that connection from Coronation Mall to Chemainus. So the next was active transportation, and I think I've spoken a lot about this. So lots of people talked about, love having that option in the mix of how they get around, but not always a beneficial way to get around or a convenient way to get around. If it's too hot, too cold, if it's raining, snowy, or you're tired, you just don't want to do that. But more sidewalks are needed in specific areas, bike lanes, street lighting, charging stations for electric bikes, which really are on the rise and very helpful with the hills. But you really do need a secure place if you're going to have an e-bike to park it if you're downtown, for example. Same with mobility scooter parking. A few suggestions came out that we could explore potential community collaborations with an e-bike share program. So that is very similar to the BCAA program you might have seen if you're in Nanaimo recently. They're piloting an e-bike share that's just, they have some bikes plotted around the city as well as in Cobox and Courtney. And then the other option is an e-bike ownership program. So someone basically kicks in the upfront costs and then disperses the e-bikes out to people to kind of share that cost. And another opportunity that was discussed was including the schools. So how to maintain e-bikes. The students could work on that, and then they could also have kind of like an e-bike library where bikes are people can rent them out a little bit longer than just a few hours. So some of the suggestions that we've included in the report are to encourage public participation when the town works on their mobility plan, to help prioritize where some of the safety measures need to take place, and other security measures as well for bike safety. And then quite a few comments about a safe cycling route map. So we do have the accessibility map we did way back in the day, I think it was 2019. We did it for mobility scooters, and so that could be something that we use as kind of a template and just build off of. And then also including some measures around safety. So there were lots of safety concerns around drivers and pedestrians getting along, especially bike riders. And so, providing that kind of a safe engagement campaign for both sides of drivers and people who are using who are cycling. I want to say especially for e-bikers because they're moving so much faster than a regular bike, and I don't think even people using e-bikes realize how much more dangerous it can be when you're going at a faster speed. So with both the local taxi service and the rideshare, we had a disclaimer in the survey that said, we'll share the information with these private enterprises, but we really are not going to be supporting with any funding or anything like that in terms of making improvements. So that was kind of a disclaimer that we just included. But participants stated that there is a desire for more reliable and consistent service. There's lots of conveniences with having that door-to-door transportation flexibility, not on a fixed route, helpful to get out to the Nanaimo Airport, ferry terminals, and in emergency situations. Similar benefits for ride shares. We've talked about needing the population for a project here or a service here. Participants really would use a rideshare less than they would use a taxi. I think most people are just more comfortable with a taxi service at this point. But so 20% said they would only use it 24/7 on weekdays and 23% for weekends. So that isn't probably a compelling statistic for you ride to consider really coming into Ladysmith. And then some people commented the convenience with the app for booking. Others found that a hindrance if they don't have a smartphone. And then paying and rating the rider experience was also a convenient addition. And some did have safety hesitations with riding with strangers in their personal vehicles. I will give our former Mayor Stone credit for the suggestion that we could consider overlapping driver shifts with food delivery services and ride requests. That was something that we talked about at length when I spoke to him about the project. And so this slide, I apologize, I slipped it in right before I got here today. I had forgotten to include our last 3 questions from the survey, which asked people to prioritize which services they would use now versus in 5 years from now or in the next 5 to 10 years. The shuttle service was ranked the highest for all 3 of those categories. Under the first category, under ranking it as number 1, cycling came in second, rideshare was third, and taxi was fourth. And then the taxi was ranked slightly higher if you look at the options 2 or 3. And then cycling was ranked 4 in really highest at number 4 in all of the 4 categories or 3 categories. So our closing thoughts is that obviously it isn't unusual for rural communities to have challenges with the cost and coverage of transportation. There isn't a magic bullet solution. Disappointingly, we did not find that magic wand throughout the project. But what this project was able to do is lay more groundwork for us to explore, as well as providing some direction to strive for. And there is a lot of motivation from people, from yourselves, I know, from participants, from CBRD Transit Division, to really keep the conversation going, to collaborate and see what else can be done to improve the ridership. The 31 bus is the lowest used route in all of the Cowichan Valley transit systems, so I think they are open to seeing, what they can do with that route. They were going to explore an on-demand system, but that has been piloted out in Kelowna, and I don't think the 6 to 8 riders merits the service for calling a bus whenever you need it. So I'm not sure how far that on-demand service is really going to go with BC Transit, but this is the end. Thank you very much. We'll have the report for the public on Social Planning's website, as well as we've been sharing information on the Community Together to End Poverty social media as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Again, a lot of information, must be exhausted. I'm just going to add one little piece there in terms of the voices at the table around interest in the project. And one of the ones I found interesting was the presence of public health. They were very, very interested in the project, looking at ways of creating safety for mobility and that sort of thing, and aging in place. So that's an important voice to have on your side in these discussions. So I'll open it up to council for comments or questions. I'm seeing none at this point. Oh, Councillor Gurley.
What has to happen to increase taxi services? Are taxis not their own businesses altogether? Is there what are your thoughts on that?
I think probably the ridership is generally low. It's expensive for smaller taxi service, expensive for taxi services in general. I think the licensing. We in Ladysmith, the current taxi service is one vehicle and two drivers, so capacity obviously is limited. Yeah, that would be my full answer, I think.
Yeah. Other questions? Yep, good thorough report. Okay, I want to thank you again. You've spent your entire evening here with us.
Thank you.
We
for
appreciate
listening
your
to me for
time.
so long.
And yeah, both of these projects have so much potential for moving forward. We'd have to just hope that we find a way to do it. So thank you, and take care. Okay, I think we're ready to move on. We're now into bylaws. Item 9.1.1. These are bylaws for introduction. The first one is Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Bylaw 2022, number 2116, Amendment Bylaw 2024, number 2193. The recommendation is that Council give first, second, and third reading to Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Bylaw 2022, number 2116, Amendment Bylaw 2024, number 2193. Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Jacobson. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Vertanen opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on now to 9.1.2. This is Council Procedures Bylaw 2009, number 1666, Amendment Bylaw 2024, number 2195. The recommendation is that Council give first, second, and third reading to Council Procedures Bylaw 2009, number 166, Amendment Bylaw 2024, number 2195. Moved by Councillor Jacobson, seconded by Councillor Vertanen. Questions or comments? I see we have Councillor Stevens joined us by Zoom. Welcome. Okay, seeing no comments or questions, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Now we're talking 9.2 is bylaws for adoption, and 9.2.1, Building and Plumbing Bylaw 2024, number 2174. Recommendation is that Council adopt Building and Plumbing Bylaw 2024, number 2174. Do we have a mover? Councillor Jacobson, Councillor Vertanen, seconded. And discussion? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you. Just, and it didn't catch it last time, but it strikes me as just something weird. I'm in favor of it, but on page 102, maintenance, 14.5, a person may not use or occupy. First of all, why is occupy in italics? And secondly, it's a swimming pool. Can you occupy a swimming pool?
Through to staff.
Through the chair. That's a good point about the occupy swimming pool. I think it's strictly just trying to say like you cannot use the pool in any way. That's why I would interpret an occupy structure, or in this case, this is structure, so I would consider that occupied. Even just storing something in a building still counts as occupying it. So in this case, I think it's quite a vague term. And in terms for italicizing it, it's likely italicized because it's either identified in the terms at the beginning of the bylaw or within the building code. I can't say off memory if that's true though or not, but I can certainly check that.
Okay, and again, being very picky on next page 103, 15.6, when an energy advisor or an registered, it should be a registered. Pretty picky.
Through the chair. if that is grammatically correct, which I don't even know if that's grammatically correct to say, we can certainly change that when we do some house cleaning.
Thank you. Other highly honed observations or comments or questions from council? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. All right, we're moving right ahead. 9.2.2, this is Ladysmith fees and charges. The recommendation is that council adopt Town of Ladysmith fees and charges bylaw 2008, number 1644, amendment bylaw 2024, number 2191. Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Gourlay. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 9.2.3. This is the Water Supply Works Temporary Borrowing Bylaw. The recommendation is that council adopt Water Supply Works Temporary Borrowing Bylaw 2024, number 2192. And we have a moved by Councillor Jacobson, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Any questions or comments on this one? I wonder if we could perhaps just put it to staff just for a quick explanation on what this one is, only because it's a little bit of an unusual one. And I know that council's talked about it, but if someone's watching, they maybe want an explanation. If you could just give us a little bit of background on it before we approve it.
Most certainly. This is borrowing that was approved back in almost 5 years ago when we went out to the public using the AAP process to do some water projects, including the interconnect from Holland and Stocking, Holland Dam, and I'm drawing a blank because the last one was. Anyways, now we have, when we went to do that project, we had a grant that we were applying for. We were denied that grant. We have now readjusted what the projects are, and now this one is just for the Holland Dam side of things, and we have put a grant in and received that. Now we're using that borrowing, which has been approved, to fund the town side of this project.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. Any other questions from council? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. On to the bylaw sheet, which is 9.3, page 119 of your agendas. That's just for your perusal, unless there are questions or comments on it. Okay, moving on to new business. Item 10.1, appointment of deputy mayor. So just as way of explanation for this, because I have been in the role of deputy mayor, I have actually changed regardless of what my sign says. It's actually not deputy mayor at this point, it's actually acting mayor, which means that the acting mayor needs to have a deputy mayor. So the normal turnaround of assignments would happen in November, and we will still do that. But as an interim measure for the time being, from this point until the 4th of November, I would like to appoint Councillor Gourlay to fill in as deputy mayor. Do we need to make a motion for that? No? Okay. And you're accepting?
Thank you. Yes, I'll accept.
Okay, great. And then item 10.2, appointment of a deputy approving officer. The recommendation is that council approve the appointment of Tim Tanton as deputy approving officer. Do we have that moved by Councillor Patterson, second by Councillor Bertanen? And just for anyone who's joining us this evening, Mr. Tanton is new to our community, and he joins us from North Saanich, and we welcome him aboard. Is there any questions or comments before we take a vote? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Just for the public information, he's new to the corporation. What's he doing?
He is I got to make sure I say it correctly here. He is the Director of Infrastructure Services. Okay, thank you. Good catch. Councillor Gourlay.
What is the deputy approving officer?
I will put that through to Director, Alison McCarrick.
Thank you, through the chair. We have an approving officer, and that's Jake Bellababa, who's our Director of Development Services, and this is his deputy, and the subdivisions come through there, and they have autonomy from council on making those decisions.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. And that, I believe, brings us to question period. Do we have any questions? Good evening, Mr. Johnson.
Forgive me if you may have already covered this, but 7.3, the mobility report, under the accessibility plan discussion, it makes reference to the backdoor approach. Is that in reference to the situation we have at City Hall right now, where disabled people have to go to our back door?
I believe that is what it's making reference to. So as opposed to having people have to have an alternate point of entrance, they'd be looking to supporting the idea of more of a universal design for buildings. So that would, in a universal design, it dictates that you would design things with the idea of it being good for everyone, not just for people with any kind of physical disabilities.
So that leads me to clarification, if I may. So when we have people with accessibility problems, like going to City Hall because front stairs, or to the museum where I have to help them up the stairs, is the town going to be being more proactive in regards to putting these disabled facilities in, such as at City Hall and at the museum?
Well, I won't speak specifically to a project at this point, but I can let you know that the whole purpose of the committee, the accessibility committee, is to explore ways that the town can improve accessibility throughout town.
Okay, so it's fair to assume that the town will be taking action on this at some time.
I would say that we're moving in the right direction if we're starting to look at the specifics. And we have a group, a committee formed with members from our community who have lived experience. And the committee is new, basically, and we're just getting underway.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think we have anything else. Any other questions from the audience? Okay. I would call for adjournment. Councillor Jacobson, seconded by Councillor Patterson. All those in favor of going home? Any opposed? That's a wrap. Thanks, everybody.